All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 2nd Charter Review Board meeting for Hillsborough County. I would like to call this meeting to order and ask everyone to either rise or prepare to observe the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The Charter Review Board welcomes comments from citizens about any issue or concerns. Your opinions are valued in terms of providing input to the board members. However, it is requested at the same time that when you address the board, that comments are not directed personally, but rather directed at the issues. This provides a mutual respect between the board members and the public. We checked with staff prior to this calling of the meeting, and there was no public comment. But I wanted to welcome everybody back. We've had a bit of a break since our last face-to-face meeting. We, I think, are making history as the first Charter Review Board to meet in the middle of a pandemic. And also virtually, but thank God we have technology. We're able to still carry on the people's business. I hope that everyone here has not been affected by what's going on. Although our nation appears to be in turmoil with other issues that are not COVID related, I hope that everyone's happy and healthy and doing their best to kind of move things forward for our country. That said, has everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes from the last meeting on March 3rd? I see a lot of head shaking. Is there any questions or comments about the minutes from the last meeting?
Hey, Ed, this is Jamie Scarola. I have a comment.
You're recognized, Jamie.
Thank you. So in paragraph 2, middle, fourth line down, this is under off agenda items. I want to see if whoever's doing minutes can, Beth, is that you that controls the minutes?
It's Joe Harless from the clerk's office, and he is on here as well.
I'm over here, sir. What can I do for you?
Okay, off agenda items, paragraph 2. It's in the middle, about the fourth line down. Could you correct my name spelling, please?
Oh, your name spelling?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I also, at this time, I see Representative Fig. Your hand is up. We need you to unmute for us, please. Okay. Well, we didn't hear you. What was that, Rep?
Okay. I move adoption of the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the minutes. Is there any minutes? I hear a second. Please use the feature if you have any concerns. All right, I have a I see Ms. Stewart. You're recognized.
Yes, I was going to second.
All right, thank you very much. And please bear with us as we work through this since it's a new process for all of us, but we have a motion that's been properly seconded. Any unreadiness? All right.
Mr. Chairman, who had the motion and the second, please?
No problem. We had the motion by Representative Fig and the second by Ms. Stewart.
Thank you.
All in favor by sign of aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is carried. The minutes have been adopted from the last meeting. So folks, at the last meeting, we had several items that we talked about wanting to move forward for the board to hear about. And all of those have been noted and are being explored. Due to the virtual nature of this meeting, I made a decision that we bring forward one of the more pressing issues that the most members wanted to talk about, which is the redistricting process. Several people said they wanted to hear about the demographics of the county, as well as hearing from the Planning Commission on how this process takes place for other jurisdictions like the city of Tampa. So for this meeting, we've taken this on as the sole topic, given that we want to give everybody an equal amount of chance to talk, ask questions, and hopefully be satisfied with what they hear. The other issues will be addressed, rest assured. The county auditor's office has been reached out to, as is the county administrator's office. And many of you know that we have a new county administrator that is set to begin working on July 1st. So it didn't make much sense for us to have a meeting with the outgoing when we have a new person coming in that can talk to us soon. So at this time, I'm going to move over and have the Planning Commission and Ms. Melissa Zornita talk to us about, give us a presentation. Hopefully everyone's received documents related to that. Ms. Zornita, you're recognized to present.
Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all and be here in this virtual environment. Thank you so much for inviting us to participate in the meeting tonight. I actually have with me two staff members who are probably more expert than I am in the details of your request. Terry Egan and Yasser Gonzalez are also on the line. So I'll give sort of a brief overview, and then depending on whether you want a detailed description of the redistricting process that we follow for the city of Tampa. Mr. Egan has been our project manager for that, and so is very well versed in the legalities of redistricting. And then Mr. Gonzalez helped prepare many of the demographic materials that we provided to you all. Hopefully you got them all in advance of the meeting. We have the charge. It's a unique charge for the Planning Commission to be managing the redistricting process for the city of Tampa. It's the only jurisdiction that we do that for. That has been our responsibility for several decades, and our understanding, because it predates all of us who are here now, is that was, requested so that there was an objective view of the redistricting process. One of the things that makes it even more unique is that is the only thing that the Planning Commission has the final authority on of all of our duties. Everything else that is within our scope is we make a recommendation to one of the 4 local governments on, and they make the final decision. But on the redistricting for the city of Tampa council districts, we're the final authority. So that is a unique aspect to that process. It's something we do every 4 years. So that is also laid out in their charter, that's the frequency that it's done, which is different from the county redistricting, which happens after each census, and isn't done before each. This pretty much happens before every council election for the city of Tampa. We do the redistricting. Because we have done it for years, the districts each time don't change significantly. We have them already in fairly compact and contiguous formations, and I think, and Terry can explain in more detail about what the process that we followed, but the process this last time was really more about the edges of those districts and where, based on population growth and building and development trends, those districts needed to be reapportioned to be balanced, but it was mostly along the edges. That's sort of a quick overview of what we do, and it wasn't. I wasn't completely clear from the minutes whether or not you wanted to spend some time in the details on the redistricting process we follow for the city of Tampa, or more on the demographic aspects. So I'm happy to turn it over to either of the other gentlemen for more presentation, or just respond to your questions, whatever is your question.
At this time,
Scarola, I don't know if the chairman can recognize me.
yes, I'm in the process of. I see 2 hands, and I see Mr. Scarola and then Ms. Stewart. Mr. Scarola, excuse me, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, but you're recognized here.
Thank you, Ed. It's Scarola.
Scarola.
Melissa, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much for coming. I actually invoked the conversation in our last get together. And you probably already know this really isn't my expertise, but it's a subject that has for a long time been of importance to me down in South Hillsborough County, because residents always are asking me this question. And I saw the massive information that was produced, which is all very useful information, and appreciate that. I think though that I trust that the people that do higher math can figure out the details of balance, proper diversity, and so forth. My question was relatively straightforward, and then comes process. But the big glitch that has always been an issue for South Hillsborough County is that if you look at District 1, it takes in the Northwest, comes down through the city of Tampa, and then comes down Tampa Bay to really terminate right about at Bahia Beach. And then, now again, to make it simple without going through each of the districts, District 4 goes from east of Brandon, hooks down to the south, picks up all of Riverview, south to Waimama, to Sun City Center, and then it hooks in below Bahia Beach to pick up the remaining part of Ruskin. And 25 years ago or 30 years ago, the populations were significantly different, and it was difficult to justify this particular conversation. But times have changed. And you've submitted at least one document that helps to paint the picture pretty clearly, and that's the spreadsheet that shows the OCC district population estimate.
Yes, sir.
And if you I don't know if you have that handy, but if you can take a look at it, or if you remember it, District 1 and District 4, 1 and 4, stand out strongly with roughly 380,000 in population. Okay, Districts 2 and 3 are significantly less.
Yeah.
And so that helps to paint the picture that what's happening is South Hillsborough County has grown greatly. And I think it's time to examine the compact, contiguous nature of the way those districts were drawn, because from my standpoint, diversity issues aside for the moment, the similarity of issues that are of concern to South Hillsborough County residents started about the Alafai River and worked their way down all the way to the base of South Hillsborough County. And that, needless to say, transportation happens to be maybe the hottest issue right now down in that area. And so to the extent that, and listen, when I brought it up, the last thing I expected was a global pandemic and the rest of the issues that are going on right now. So I think we've been thrown a bit of a curveball, but to the extent that we could do something about it, I will tell you that I've got no game plan in mind. I just know that it's not right the way it is. It should be corrected. I've heard lots of theories. I've heard, maybe it's, and forgive me for stepping in it, my fellow board members, but, I'll state the obvious. There's a 4-3 makeup now of commissioners, 4 single districts, 3 at-large districts. One way to handle it would be to take single member districts as an example, or an individual single member district to make up for it. But the crux of my issue is simply that I want to make sure that the people that have common interests down in South County are joined together and not bifurcated in their thought process. That's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if you had any comments in regards to that. I didn't hear a question, so I was.
Well, I can respond that certainly our largest population growth right now is in South Hillsborough County. That is where we're seeing most of our building permits being pulled and things of that nature. So that absolutely is the hot spot. Whereas 15 years ago, it might have been Northwest Hillsborough County. So the growth pressures have shifted, and we're seeing that in all of our work. And the other thing I would simply add is that in many of our planning documents, South Hillsborough County is, they have a community-wide plan, a system plan for that whole area. So that is how they are to some degree viewing themselves.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart, you had your hand up and you're recognized.
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Stewart, did you still want to speak?
I do.
I saw your hand here in the system. Edith,
Oh, no, I must not know which is off.
no worries. I just want to make sure we got to you. I see your
As
hand
long as
now.
you know which is up.
It's all right. All right. Well, Representative Fig, I saw that you had your hand up also, and you're recognized.
Yes, I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman. First of which is, I appreciate very much the presentation from the city of Tampa, but since they have a whole very different process than the county does, perhaps we need to focus more on how the county does its process. Secondly, I'm very much in sympathy with South County. I think you have a dreadfully drawn district. It's certainly not compact and contiguous as we would like to see districts be drawn in an ideal world. There's no ideal world when it comes to redistricting. So I think that we all understand your concern, and the variance in population at the present time, and perhaps the representative from the Planning Commission can speak to this, the variation in the districts now is a result of the changed population over the last redistricting period. Is that correct?
I don't know that we went backwards in time to look at what the population was in 2011 when the last redistricting would have been done, but there has been a considerable amount of growth in South Hillsborough, and since those two districts are the ones that touch it, that's a conclusion that I think one could draw.
Correct. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Representative. Mr. Scarola, I see your hand up again. Recognized.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Melissa, so one other thing that you mentioned that caught my attention, and again, I threw out the 4-3 issue in single member districts, but I wouldn't be opposed in the slightest, and I'd love to hear others' comments, if the Planning Commission were simply given the task. And I think that in terms of it being a final decision by the Planning Commission, why not? I mean, I'm a believer in math and science, and that's what I think ought to drive this thing. It's a population and diversity issue. What is the possibility of arranging our charter such that the Planning Commission is given the task of working out the details?
So we have Mary Helen Ferris on the line with us, the county attorney, and our counsel is right now. But I do believe that is something we can put in front of the voters as a potential amendment. And Mr. Gonzalez, I see you have a comment, but I'd like to have Ms. Ferris kind of address the county redistricting process at this time, and I'll come to you, sir.
Yes, the last two redistrictings, what the county did was create a group of staff with various abilities. We held meetings, we created some maps just based on the criteria that we had to, and then we had meetings throughout the county and took in public comment and citizens, and then the board had they had a workshop and several public hearings before they adopted the map that they did.
And I would say that's very similar to the process that we follow in terms of making sure that there's public engagement throughout the process. So I don't know that there's a ton of difference between what we do.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, you have your hand up. Some comments to add. You're recognized. Okay, the hand's down, so I guess not. Anyone else with some comments? Because I believe that some very valid points have been brought up. When we made the decision to start to look at this particular process, one of the things that I did when I saw some of the data was begin to look at other counties of similar sizes. And where Hillsborough is now in terms of our growth, what we're starting to see is, as I'm hearing from Jamie and others, that the representation is appearing to be somewhat out of whack. If you take a look at counties, and I'll just throw Palm Beach out there, for example, they have a population similar to ours with 1.4 million people. They have single member districts with 7 commissioners. In fact, Hillsborough County is probably the outlier from what I can tell in terms of having over 1 million people in their county and not being having a single member district format for its county commission. We're the only one in that particular bucket. So it is something I feel we should probably be taking a look at, because I think the concern that I've heard from people in the community is simply that the commissioners get to basically have a lot of say-so over that process, whereas something like this should be put back into the hands of the people to decide how they want their district. So that's just my editorial content for tonight. Anybody else have some comments? I see Ms. Robin, I see you, and you are recognized.
So that was very helpful to find out about Palm Beach. Have we kind of looked at across the state what balance has of counties that have a situation like ours and those that have single member districts that are, besides Palm Beach, that are similar populations? Because I have the same concern that you have.
I am not the expert. I'll just give you the top counties in my research. Broward County has 9 commissioners, single member districts, 1.8 million people. Miami-Dade has 13 with 2.6 million people in single member districts. Orange County, a couple of counties over from us, has 6 commissioners, an elected mayor, but 1.3 million people in single member districts. Nearest to us in size in this area is Pinellas County. Pinellas has 950,000 people with the mixed format that we have, as does Duval, that has 19 commissioners with 925,000 people, which, wow, God bless you, Duval County. I see Mary Helen Ferris had a comment, and I'll go to her, and I have other members listed. I'm going to be coming to Mr. Wood next.
I was just going to say, I have all that information from the Florida Association of Counties that I can share with Beth, and she can send it out to everybody so you can see all the counties that are charter counties.
Thank you. Mr. Wood, you're recognized.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to understand the thrust of this conversation. Do we want staff to, for example, study different formats of having 7 single member districts or 9 single member districts? Where do we want to go with this?
Can I add to that?
Yes. I'm not going to answer that because I think that's a question for the entire board that can be posed in a motion. But Mr. Scarola, I'm going to yield to you at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. So, you know, again, let me state the obvious. We've lost a lot of time, and time is critical. Not to mention there's an upcoming election. There's 2 things we could do. We could go back for some research, or if we know the direction we're headed, we could try to take some action. I'm not opposed to the concept of not changing the number of commissioners, leaving it at 7, but moving it to the single member district, and then at the same time recognizing that it needs to be determined, that districting needs to be determined by an independent entity, which the Planning Commission is actually ideal for with all their demographic data collection. You know, I'm not going to do it yet because I'd love for other people to join in or see if they think that if anybody on our board thinks I'm going in the wrong direction. But if not, I'm prepared to make a motion that we move in that direction somehow. So I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Okay. I'm going to go to Ms. Berry. You're recognized.
Thank you. I'm with Mr. Wood. I just kind of want to see the data, the information for me to get a motion of best practice of what other counties are doing. And not saying that I am in support of all single member districts, but I want to make sure that we keep what's intact and go with the population growth that we currently had and maybe adding on to what we already have. Not to say that our system is broken. It could work for us, just adding additional members based off the population over the last however many years to just for us to catch up. So for me, I would like to see the information and the data to make the best decision, and then maybe getting the planning commissions, whatever recommendation that they have, and kind of wait until I can pretty much want to actually vote for something right now. So that's just my say. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Berry. Mr. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of want to echo what was just said regarding the need for the data before we start making the decisions on this. Obviously, trying to reconstitute how we're going to have all the different commissioners laid out is definitely going to be important for us to make sure that we're making good decisions with good data, which I know that the Planning Commission would be able to supply. The only thing I want to be able to try and make sure, and if there is a motion, I'd like to try and get this included. If not, I'll ask to amend the motion. But I would like to be able to see a few different scenarios. The 7, if we have individual districts at either 7 members or 9 members, I would definitely want to be able to see both those scenarios. So I know that Mr. Scarola was kind of leading that as far as at the beginning of the conversation, and was looking to be able to try and make a motion at some point. So Mr. Scarola, if you are going to be making a motion, I would like you to be able to add those scenarios. Otherwise, I will be amending the motion when we go through this. So that's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Fig, and then Dr. Fox.
Thank you very much. And I hope that I'm not going to speak to the issue of whether we should have all single member districts or a multi-member combo that we have now, but I would like to speak to the issue of you can't compare one county to the other unless you know the background about each county. For example, Pinellas, very little of Pinellas County is in the unincorporated part of the county, whereas in Hillsborough County, greater than 50% of the population and greater than 50% of the land mass lies in the unincorporated part of the county. So that's a very significant difference. Duval County has a very exotic charter. The city of Jacksonville is basically in command there. So that's very different. So we need to understand that you've got to be able to compare apples with apples and not apples with oranges. And thank you.
Dr. Fox, and then Ms. Stewart.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a practical question, and perhaps we discussed it and I don't remember it, but could we talk about the timeline? In other words, if it's going to be a ballot issue for this election, what would our time constraints be? And also the effect of the 2020 census, and would this be reviewed again after that?
Thank you. And I'll defer to County Attorney Ms. Harris, if you'd like to.
Yes, this is Mary Helen. The date for putting something on the 2020 ballot is basically mid-August to get the Charter Review Board resolution with all the right language in it. Now, remember that you have the ability to put it on 2022, but since we're going to redistrict anyway in 2021, it would be cost effective if you could put something on this ballot because we're going to be redistricting anyway.
Okay. Dr. Fox, does that answer your question?
Yes, well, yes, partly. I didn't understand. Mary Helen, would you review that last part of your statement again? I didn't quite get it.
Because you have a year to meet and there's an election in between the year, then you can put something on in 2020. And then after the November, if you come up with a different proposal, it can go on 2022.
Okay. Ms. Stewart, and then Mr. Wood.
Is my mic on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. If we put something on 2022, we would have already redistricted, and that'd be a hard sell since the board had already gone through public hearings, et cetera. And also, I'd like to go on the record right now as saying I'm totally opposed to to single member districts. As part of my duties at Hillsborough County for the many years I worked there, I interface with the Association of Counties and many boards of county commissioners. And single member districts just pit one neighborhood against the other. And there is not the meeting of the minds. Right now, everybody elects 4 county commissioners. Single member districts would tie you down to 1. And so 1 county commissioner would be the only one you could lobby on your behalf. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Wood, you're recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I want to comment on Jim's thought. I just want us to be careful that we don't mingle together 2 different topics. The idea that we might redistrict and that we might have the planning commission determine what those boundaries are. I would strongly suggest those be 2 different motions so that it doesn't fail because there's people dislike one but not the other, and vice versa. Yeah, and back to the remark made earlier, I would really like a staff study looking at the ramifications, pros and cons of changing our districting plan. And 7 and 9 are appealing options to me. Thank you.
And let's see, one last hand here. Mr. Scarola, you are recognized. You're on mute, sir.
Thank you for that. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Unless anybody has an objection at this point, I propose to make a motion, and I'll try to put it down. And of course, welcome to make comments. But I agree that there probably ought to be 2 motions. I think for the moment we should have staff to go back and review other jurisdictions and look at the makeup of those districts versus populations, and come back with what I heard were several options. Come back with several options of opportunities for us to balance this out better. And then as a second motion, since I'm for the moment I'm trying to summarize, but for the second motion, I would propose that the keeper of the numbers would be placed into the hands of the Planning Commission. So in general, that's where I am at the moment.
Okay, so we'll take your motions one at a time. So for the record, if you'll just give us the first that you'd like us to address.
And I'm sorry, one more time, I didn't get you.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll break those 2 ideas up into 2. So if you'll give us your first motion, and we'll wait for a second before we move forward.
Okay. So to restate the first motion, it would be that to ask staff to, prior to our next meeting, to research other jurisdictions for the makeup of boards relative to population, and to provide several possible scenarios extrapolating the results of those findings into what could be done for Hillsborough County.
Second.
All right. I heard the first and I heard a second. Who provided the second?
Leanna Fox.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. So we have a motion that has been properly seconded. Do we have any debate?
I'm not understanding.
I see 3 hands. I see Mr. Johnson. I'll start with you, sir.
And I just want to be able to clarify, and I just to the intent of the motion. I know that there had been I know that Mr. Wood and a couple of others had mentioned as far as the specificity of 7 and 9, and as far as the actual board, the numbers. Do we want to be specific on what we're actually asking for? Just wait for the Planning Commission to bring something back to us and hope that's what we want. And that's more of I'm not trying to debate that the Planning Commission is going to bring us something we don't want. I just want to make sure that we're telling them what we want, since we do have such a specific amount of time and a very short amount of time. So I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. And if we need to amend the motion, that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
I'm going to go back to the maker of the motion just for clarification to see if he can answer your question.
Yeah, what I was attempting to do, and yet I see both sides of this, by the way, but what I was attempting to do is give them the flexibility. What I don't want to do is drive it just to single member districts. If there's other options that I don't understand, I want them to be made available to us. But listen, there's no issue for me to move into more specificity in the motion. I did want to give them the flexibility. That's why I did it purposefully like that.
Before I move over to the others, I see Ms. Zornita, you have your hand up. Is there something you'd like to add?
Well, I thank you. I did just want to put on the record that we are probably not experts in redistricting. Like, we're experts in doing what we do in terms of apportioning the population amongst the 4 districts for the city of Tampa. But in terms of this research, in bringing forth a recommendation on what is the best way to represent Hillsborough County in terms of commission districts, I feel a little bit uncomfortable that that's a little bit outside of our expertise. So I just wanted to say that before you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, did that clarification, did that help?
I think so, and I think that within the minutes we're going to be okay. I just wanted to make sure before we move forward, again, because of the fact that we have such a small time frame to be able to do things. I'd hate for us to have to come back to another meeting and just, maybe not have what we were looking for originally. And that's certainly not a knock on Melissa and her crew. They do a great job over there. I just wanted to try and make things easier if possible. But I'm sure that, going through the transcripts, they're going to be able to see what the intent of the motion is, I believe. And I'll be happy with that. I just want to make sure that we had that all on record, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I'm going to move to Representative Fig and then Mr. Wood.
Yes, thank you.
You're muted, Representative. Thank you.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to say I think the motion is flawed because it speaks to the process of reapportioning, and that is not, I think, what Mr. Scarola meant to do. I think you need to be specific about whether you want to explore single-member districts and what that might look like, or whether you want to expand districts and what that might look like. But you can't ask staff to come back with a reapportionment plan because that's what's done after the process for determining the reapportionment is set. Is that clear what I just said? Did you understand, Mr. Rain, my point?
I'm sorry, you're addressing that to me. I understand where you're coming from. Mr. Scarola would need to amend that motion to make it very clear. To your point, from what my understanding is, he's asking staff to research options on whether we should go to single member districts or a mixed version, or consider going from 7 to 9 or staying at 7, like presenting all options based off of data they have on other counties.
I think that's a good clarification of his motion.
Okay. And did I state that properly?
Ed, well said. Thank you for that. And I'll accept it if we need to clarify it with that information, but thank you for putting that in.
Just information. Got it.
Do you need a formal, I'm sorry, speaking out of time. Mr. Rain, do you need a formal motion to amend or offer as a substitute the original motion?
I don't think in this case, because we just provided a clarification and everyone seems to be in agreement that that's what we're asking for, information from staff on options.
Thank you.
Okay. Keeping right along, Mr. Wood, you're recognized.
Let me pass. I'll pass. Thank you.
Ms. Delaverne, you're recognized.
Just the question I have is, and it kind of goes back to what Melissa said, is the planning, I agree with Representative Figg's clarification. I'm very supportive of the motion. One question is, who really is the right staff to provide that information? Is it the Planning Commission or is it somebody other county staff so that we get the right people providing, since we're not asking necessarily demographics, but looking at what's done in other places across the state.
I'm going to ask that question to be answered by the county attorney or even Ms. Cardenas, because I believe, this is just my guess, before they answer, they'll direct that to the appropriate, they'll gather that information from the appropriate departments within the county. But I don't want to speak out of turn. Ms. Ferris, am I accurate or no?
Yes, you are, and I have a lot of documentation on what other counties do, and you're also what the Florida statutes require as to what you can do. So I'm happy to work. If I need to reach out to the Planning Commission, I can, but I think Beth and I can put some information together. That would be very helpful.
Thank you. I was just thinking the original motion directed the Planning Commission, so that was why I was asking.
Understood. Okay, I see Representative Figg, your hand's still up. I don't know if you intend to speak again. Okay. Wait, I see Ms. Zornita has her hand up. Did you intend to speak, or is that just the computer? Okay. No worries. It's all new, folks. All right. Well, Mr. Scarola, I'm gonna let you go ahead and close on your motion here if you have any final comments before we take it for a vote.
I don't. I think all those comments were very productive. I think we've got a direction with it now, and I'll happily accept the vote.
Okay. Well, I see a bit of unreadiness from Mr. Mueller. You're recognized. You're on mute, sir.
Thank you. We've had a motion, and then we've had quite a few comments and stuff, and I just want to check with our county attorney to make sure she's clear on what the motion's going to be, or whether she wants a clarified motion.
This is Mary Helen. I think I'm clear on what we would bring back.
Yeah, all minds and hearts are clear. We have a motion that's been properly seconded. We've addressed it in discussion. Are you ready for the vote? We are going to be doing this vote by roll call. So the clerk of the court's representative will call your name and you'll state yay or nay.
Mr. Narain?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Berry?
Yeah, yes.
Bryant?
Yes.
Laverne?
Yes.
Figg?
Yes.
Fox?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Scarola?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stewart? Stewart?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Thrower?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
And Yates.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. Mr. Scarola, I'm going to throw it back to you. You had a second motion that you wanted to make in reference to the Planning Commission. Do you still want to move forward with that? We can't hear you, sir. You're still on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. So this stems from the concept that the Planning Commission, being an independent entity, would be, as utilized by the city of Tampa, would be an appropriate entity to do the math part of this equation. And so I would like to have staff investigate, and if that includes the Planning Commission discussing whether they would be included, or that they would consider being included in being the determiner of the rules of districting. I'm being careful with that and happily accept comments, but for the Planning Commission being the determiner of rules of districting based on the best demographic data available at the time of determination. Best demographic data available at the time of determination. The reason I said that, by the way, is that right now they do projections. They're going to have a 2020 census at some point and have hard data. So I don't know a better way to do it than to say the best available data.
So I also need clarification on your motion. So we would be requesting that the Planning Commission participate in this process, or I'm a little lost.
Yeah, I guess the best way to put it is I want to head in the direction of determining whether the Planning Commission can be our determiner of districting. Now, that doesn't mean doing apportionment now, but whether they can be the determiner, because if it could be written into the charter that they are the determiner, then that's what I'd like an investigation done for.
Okay, so for clarity, we'd be asking staff to bring back information on whether or not the Planning Commission could become the entity that draws all maps for Hillsborough County.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? I see Mr. Muller's hand, but you don't need to raise your hand if you were going to make a second.
I'll second so we can discuss. This is Leanna Fox.
Okay, we have a second from Dr. Fox, and we are open to discussion. I'm going to start with Mr. Mueller.
I didn't realize my hand was up. I don't have a comment, I'm sorry.
No problem at all. It's all new. Okay, I see Mr. Thrower's hand.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that if with the redistricting, the Planning Commission would need additional resources. So that might be something that we would want to bring up, because that would expand their work program for the Planning Commission, and they get a lot of their funding from the county. So that's something that probably should be included.
I see Representative Fig, you're recognized. You're still on mute, Representative.
Okay. Has the motion been seconded?
Yes, it has, by Dr. Fox.
I see. I'd like to speak against the motion.
You're recognized.
Thank you. I think it's premature of us to consider delegating to the Planning Commission a job that is the county commission's. And as it is in the legislature, that the legislature makes its own apportionment, and that of, by the way, congressional districts in the state of Florida. The Planning Commission is a partially appointed body, and I think that they perform a good job at what they do, but I do not want them making decisions, the final decisions for my county commission districts. I want my elected officials to make that decision. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I see Dr. Fox's hand. Dr. Fox, you're recognized.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Scarola if you could elaborate a little bit more on why you felt the need to make this part separate, number one, and why the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. I appreciate the question. And first, I took to heart Art Wood's comment that best separate these proposals so one doesn't drag down the other, number one. Number two, and this is the most important part, I've always been a believer that the math and science ought to control these things and not the political body. This is a numbers question. And the Planning Commission does a great job with numbers. They're the closest ones to it. And I think that's what we're deciding between. And having said that, my motion doesn't ask them to do it. My motion says, let's explore it and see what can be done. There is a cost associated with it. And I want to go ahead and amend the motion to investigate what that cost would be. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So I want to throw that into the motion as well. Hopefully, Dr. Fox, that gives you some information.
Okay, so could you restate your motion now?
Ooh, okay. This motion is to ask that staff go back and investigate the possibility of the Planning Commission being the keeper of district district boundaries and maps for Hillsborough County, and that the cost associated with doing that work be a portion of the county's budget.
We have a motion. Dr. Fox, are you keeping the second?
Yes, I seconded so we could have the discussion. So it doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to vote for it.
Understood. Understood. Okay. I see Mr. Thrower and Mr. Thrower at this point.
Actually, I made my comment about the cost. I don't have a comment right now. Thank you.
Okay. I still see your hand. I'm going to recognize Ms. Stewart.
I would like to point out that there is no cost to have county staff do it. We have a GIS department which assisted us the last time around, and they drew exemplary maps, and there's no additional cost. They're already funded and use those GIS systems extensively. Also, I think putting the Planning Commission in the political position of drawing communities of interest, which the commissioners feel very possessive of. They know what their communities of interest are, or at least they believe they do. So the political, excuse me, the political consideration places the Planning Commission at a disadvantage. That's all.
Thank you. Any other hands? This will be the time to do that before we close on the motion.
Ed, I have a hand up.
Okay, I'm going to let you close because it's your motion. Okay, Mr. Scarola, you are free to close.
Okay, I just wanted to add that the Planning Commission staff are experts in the public process. They know how to engage the public. They do it for our comprehensive planning, which is incredibly important. And so I think they'd be ideal for this. I think that it does help to take what I'm guessing is a pretty intense level of politics out of it because they're the keeper of the numbers. So that's the best I'm going to be able to say for it. And remember, I'm not asking you to vote for it. I'm asking you to vote for an investigation into it.
All right, we've heard the closing on that. I see Ms. Delvania, I see your hand. You're recognized.
Just wondering if, because the cost the Planning Commission has come up, is if we could amend the motion that when they come and provide the information, again, it's not saying the Planning Commission should do it, but there would be an estimated cost if they were the ones who were to do it, so that we're making that decision with that information.
I'm including that in the motion.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to turn things over to the clerk for the vote. If you'll do the roll call for us, please. Thank you.
Narain?
Yes.
Barry?
No.
Bryant?
Yes.
Delaverne?
Yes.
Fig?
So,
That was a no, ma'am?
Yes, that is correct. No.
Fox?
No.
Johnson?
Yes.
Bueller?
Yes.
Scarola?
Yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Shaw?
No.
Stewart?
No.
Thrower?
Yes.
Wood?
No.
Yates?
No.
One moment, please. Motion failed 7-7. Barry, Fig, Fox, Shaw, Stewart, Wood, and Yates voted no.
All right. Thank you for the outcome of that. All right, we are going to move into I see Mr. Wood's hand as we get ready to move into new business, but before we go there, I'm going to recognize Mr. Wood.
I'll pass.
Okay. All right, moving right into new business. Does anyone have anything that they want to bring up? I see Miss Yates, you're recognized.
I think you started, thank you. You started earlier letting us know that we moved out the county administrator. Is that still going to be on our agenda at some point coming up here, fall or whatever? I just wanted to make sure that was still a topic for this group.
Absolutely, it is. We voted and agreed that we would do that. My thought process behind not having it on this particular meeting was that we have a new county administrator that's starting July. So I wanted to hear it. Okay. I see Mr. Wood, your hand's up.
Oh, I hope not. I'm sorry.
Mr. Scarola, your hand is also up. You're recognized.
Sorry about that, Ed. Not intended.
Okay, this is your last chance to virtually, oh, Mr. Thrower, I see your virtual hand. And you're on mute. You're still on mute, sir. There you go.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I guess I wanted to comment on the county administrator. I know we've got the new county administrator coming in. Is there any thought to hearing both the old county administrator and a new one? Because I know the old one haven't been in position for a while. It might be interesting to hear his thoughts on some of the issues and questions we have since he has so much experience in the position. I would just suggest it might be beneficial to hear from him, especially on his way out. He may be more honest. Not that I shouldn't say it like that. He may be more open.
Candid.
Good, better word. So I think it might be beneficial to hear from him. He may be more candid. I like that word a lot better. Thank you.
I don't disagree with you on the verbiage or the request. We'll ask staff to ask if the outgoing county administrator will also be willing to present. Keep in mind that he'll be a private citizen at that point, and it'll be strictly up to him whether or not he wants to come in. But knowing Mr. Merrill like I do, for the good of the county, he'll do whatever needs to be done. So,
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I see Ms. Spratling has her hand up. You're recognized.
Thank you. My comment would be, in addition to Mr. Thrower's, that if the outgoing county administrator is unavailable to participate, whether he would entertain a written report of an overview of the position and his experiences that could be informative to this board.
Excellent suggestion. Okay. Are there any other items or questions about new business that we need to address tonight? I still see a couple of hands, but I don't know if they're legit. I've got Mr. Wood's hand up, Mr. Thrower's hands up.
No.
Okay, no. Okay. Mr. Thrower? No?
No, sorry.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. At this point in time, has there been any additional public comment that's come in since we've been meeting?
Yes, sir. Chairman, this is James Brewer with Communications. You have Mark Nash on the line. At this point, you can recognize Mr. Nash, and he has his time for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Nash. Thank you. And Mr. Nash, you are recognized. You have 3 minutes.
I guess the first question is, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Fantastic. Welcome back, everybody. I really don't have anything. I will prepare some remarks, public comment at the beginning of the July meeting, but obviously I wish there were more regular people perhaps involved in this process, but I appreciate the comments this evening that you all have discussed. There were a lot of items that were brought up as future items at the last live meeting that for some reason were not on any agenda to be spoken of today. So whoever is watching the process, I would encourage them to review the future items or the interested items that were brought up at the end of the last live meeting. I think there were other things that could have been discussed today. That's all I have to offer.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Nash. And just for clarification, at the very beginning of the meeting, I'm not sure if you were dialed in at that point, but the 4 issues that we talked about in the last meeting that we said we'd bring forward, we made a decision not to, in this meeting, to address this one issue that we figured would take up a lot of time. But those items, such as the county administrator report, the civil service board, and the internal auditor, will be addressed in future meetings. So the good news is we have a year to meet, and we will tackle all of the work that the public's asking us to do. Thank you for your comments. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for your time tonight. I wish you and your families the best. Please say a prayer for our county, and have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Right.